Good morning and welcome to Blain's Morning Porridge. It's the 16th of March 2026. Market sentiment will tumble on unwinnable wars. Let's start with a quote. This is not Franklin Delano Roosevelt we're dealing with here. Suddenly, global markets are reeling, waking up to the reality of the likely unwinnable Iran war. What will a dramatic shift in sentiment mean for stocks, bonds, and commodities as stagflation beckons and Trump finds himself increasingly isolated? There is a growing risk of a liquidity shock to global markets. Did you feel the moment the wind changed over the weekend? The strum drang of markets are now being driven by fears of what increasingly looks like an unwinnable war in Iran. The big issues will be sentiment and consequences. Markets have generally been positive, constructive, and bought into expectations of US growth this year from earnings and the AI boost. Now they fear stagflation, rising rates, slowing demand, supply chain shocks, and a rising concern on just how much the US midterm elections may destabilise markets further, especially if Trump is hammered in the polls and how he reacts. The consequences of Trump's attack on Iran, on stocks, bonds, and the global economy look bleak, and the risk is a crisis triggered by a liquidity flight. Personally, I'm back to all in on gold. But just stop for a moment. I love writing about markets. They are genuinely interesting and they stimulate what passes for my mind. But rather than try explaining rising instability and risks, can't I have just occasional days off to talk about how fantastic and extraordinary the world away from stocks, bonds, currencies, and commodities really are? And if you need evidence of the extraordinariness of humanity, let me cite the Super Saturday of Six Nations rugby we were just treated to. It was the most exciting oval ball day the globe has ever seen. A fantastic and much closer game than the scoreline suggested between Ireland and Scotland in the first match. Wales finally getting their act together against the dazzling Italians, and finally the tension as France beat England with the very last kick of the championship to secure the title. Every team won, no one lost, and it was utterly, magnificently brilliant, a celebration of pride, skill, and passion. That Scotland came third on the table was a triumph. We are the only team to have beaten France, the champions. That England played so well after such a terrible season and would have won if Boris's rumoured love child wasn't such a Pollock the Pillock speaks masses about the resilience of the team. Trump can do whatever the F he wants after a day like that. The problem is, he probably will. But let's get back to the real world. There is a rising sense the Trump blusterosphere is deflating, and that may be decisively popped in the November midterms as the consequences on US voters become clear. Over the weekend, Trump twittered on Truth Social about banning and closing US media outlets he deems disloyal and unpatriotic on their coverage of the Iran war. Yup, that's how it begins. Perversely, Trump's best hope of avoiding complete lame duckery is the uncanny ability of the Democrats to keep saying and doing all the wrong things. More importantly, global markets are spinning. There is a real risk of a reversal internationally and domestically. On the upside, there are a couple of things supporting markets at present which are unusual. The first is buy the dip mentality, the idea that mean reversion means that markets return to the trend. But that doesn't account for the fact most people active in markets today have never experienced a full-on bear market as we did in 2008. The real trend is not ultra-low interest rates, low inflation and government bailouts. Oh, no, it isn't. The second issue is the lack of connectivity. Few folks seem to grasp how a broken cog in one part of the global markets can cause the gears of another part to crash. Consequences, consequences. Now, this time last week, Donald Trump was hurling insults at the UK, telling Sir Keir Starmer he wasn't welcome to a war that America had already won. Yet on Saturday, the rest of the world looked the other way, ignoring Trump's appeal to send ships to join America, making the Straits of Hormuz safe for navigation. An American Republican voting chum emailed last night to demand that Western nations surge ships and resources to support America in the Gulf to avoid a sustained global energy crisis. He argued we should put aside any doubts on Trump and join his crusade. But to what end? A coalition of the unwilling risking life and limb to preserve Trump's reputation? The only thing that will reopen Hormuz will be de-escalation, which means a Trump climb down and letting others negotiate. And I simply can't see that happening. Unlike the UK during the Suez Crisis in the 1950s, when Eisenhower forced the UK to step back from its efforts to regain ownership of the Suez Canal, who is going to tell Trump to back off? He won't. And the only power on earth that will be able to do so will be US voters in November's midterms. As a result, the prospects for long-term energy shock look huge. The prospects for America being embarrassed are equally large. And what non-new American politician would now risk domestic votes supporting a man universally reviled by the critical young voter demographic in Europe and Asia? Trump committed his nation to a war without the approval of his national legislature, and that was a massive mistake. Spreading the foundations for any Blain game is something no professional politician should have missed, and he could have asked his good chum and Board of Peace buddy Tony Blair for advice on how unpopular invasions of sovereign nations without a clear plan play out. I'm talking about Iraq 2003. Israel will be the happiest nation. They can keep mowing the lawn every few years, dropping bombs on anything that looks new and shiny across Iran, and doing deals for energy with Saudi. To the rest of the world, Iran looks to be an unwinnable, asymmetric, forever war that will play out to the benefit of Russia and therefore ultimately China. And no, Trump has not cleverly set a trap for China by inviting them to participate in the Hormuz peace fleet. China has reserves, controls supply chains, and can wait. Key for Europe now is how quickly and securely Qatar can build a pipeline for gas across the desert to the Med. Now, no one will ever deny that Iran regime is a bad thing for the Iranians, the Gulf, and the globe, but Trump and his cabinet of sycophants will be remembered for failure on a scale much greater than Jimmy Carter's crashed helicopters in the desert in 1979. Trump will go down for starting an ill-considered war with few clear objectives, an unwinnable war that will tip the global economy into stagflation, weakening the Gulf economies, and who else has not received umpteen emails and LinkedIn from Dubai brokers offering cheap property this morning? And it's all being bow-waved by a mounting energy shock that is still developing. Nice one, Donald. It's no wonder that global markets are now showing symptoms of dread liquidity flu. These wheezing sounds you can hear from private credit sound like an infection on the lungs. The coughing is getting worse as folks seek exits, and there are none. And when liquidity becomes the fear, then wheezy markets catch pneumonia. It's time to remind you all of some of Blain's critical market mantras. Number 12, that there are only 27 doors marked entry to the New York Stock Exchange, but only one marked exit. Number 1, that markets have but one objective, to inflict the maximum amount of pain on the maximum number of participants. Or number 6, that in a crisis, a bid is a bid is a bid, and you should hit it harder and faster than the proverbial red-headed stepchild. Sorry to any gingers this morning. Or number 16, 'tis better to miss the last 5% of the rally than catch the first 50% of the crash. Or number 23, all that glitters is not gold, especially if you can only hold it in a digital wallet. And finally, how about a new mantra I've introduced this morning, number 28, buy the dip is a winning strategy, right up till it isn't. What's likely to happen next is the reversal of the factors that have been supporting upside for US and global markets from the pace and verve of the pre-Iran US economy. Now, these may now be drowned out in a rising sense of mistake and looming disaster. In a strong and confident market, which was also expecting rate cuts, there was optimism on how AI and AI infrastructure spending would drive the economy higher. That may now unravel as questions about rising energy costs, timing, global competition, and political uncertainty around the midterms start to mount. I'm going to be watching the looming SpaceX IPO as a bellwether for speculative sentiment in coming months. In a frothy market, SpaceX would literally fly. Now, maybe not. Anyway, I'm out of time and I got to get back to my day job. You can catch the Morning Porridge on www.morningporridge.com, and if you sign up, you'll get it delivered direct to your email every morning. Otherwise, I'll be back with something else completely different tomorrow. Well, I hope it will be completely different, but I have a suspicion it's going to be more about Iran. Thanks very much for your attention. Back soon.